Hey, how's it going? I'm making this opening recording after having recorded gameplay and after having recorded audio, and I just want to do this as a heads up because I want to address the gameplay. There is a lot of deaths. It's not very entertaining to watch, but I want to keep it in unedited because I want to show that you don't have to be good at this game. You just need patience. And I also need to give the context that I recorded this gameplay after having beat Celeste already. So this is me going in already knowing what to do and already knowing how to play and being comfortable with the controls. So just a heads up. So I've been putting off playing Celeste for a while, even though I know is my type of game. It's a side scroller, it's pixel art, it's simple, 2D, platformer, and I know I'm gonna love it. I don't know why I put it off for so long, but I finally came around to it and I finally beat it. And I didn't think I would walk away with a nice message from it. I didn't think it would have any sort of story. I thought it was just gonna be a straightforward platformer. And honestly, I thought about skipping the story because at this point in my life, I am trying to balance games that are story driven, where I give all of my attention to, wearing headphones, spend hours just immersed in the story, and then I want to play games where I can just turn my brain off and enjoy the gameplay, because I am gameplay over graphics, gameplay over story, gameplay over everything. Gameplay comes first. So I was going to make Celeste that game, just like I did for Bulletstorm, where I played Bulletstorm before this and I just skipped the story just to enjoy it, and I did. And I was going to do the same for Celeste, but it hooked me. I paid attention to the introduction. I was getting to know these characters. I came to learn about our main character. Her name is Madeline, and she has a goal to climb this mountain, Celeste. She wants to get to the top and just prove to herself that she can. And along the way, she meets a friend, Theo, who's pretty encouraging and supportive and kind. But she also meets people who discourage her and doubt her and think that she can't get to the top of the mountain, and actually advise her that she shouldn't, because it's actually pretty difficult and it's a strange place to be, and it gives you the feeling that is not entirely safe, and not many people have done it, and it's not recommended that you should. But regardless, people go, including Madeline, who you play as, and you go on your journey to reach the top of the mountain. Now, she doesn't get into details as to why she wants to climb the mountain. At least I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do know it's just to simply prove to herself that she can, and just see another place that she hasn't been to. So on her journey, like I said, she runs into Theo, which is a very kind and supportive friend that's also on a journey to get to the top of the mountain. And she runs into another peculiar character, Mr. Oshiro, who runs an abandoned hotel, and he wishes to keep it running, or wish that it never failed, but that's a whole story within itself. He's another character that's a little misunderstood and had hopes for something greater, and discourages you a bit along the way to reach the top of the mountain of Mount Celeste. And the last person you meet is a reflection of yourself, which I looked it up after the fact, but it's a physical form of your anxieties and doubts, and they actually call her Badeline, which I think is pretty cool. But you run into her, and she's definitely the most negative. She definitely does the most discouraging out of everyone you meet, and she kind of messes things up for you along the way. She ruins the segment of the story where you're trying to help Mr. Oshiro and his hotel. She kind of causes a ruckus and messes things up, Also, when you get past that, she would continue to bother you. She becomes an obstacle, a deterrent to your journey. She would even be an adversary at some points, and you would have to run away from her. And basically, whenever Battleline was around, she just carried this presence of being an enemy instead of another character you can rely on. So this whole time, you would think you want to get rid of her, and you have to find a way to get her back into this reflection, or somehow destroy her, or run away from her, lose her in some way or form. And this was Madeline's thoughts in the beginning for a while, but as you continue to play the game, you find out, with the help of Theo, you guys have some conversations by campfires and just the journey along the way, and also just through your own actions and your own travels in the mountain, you find out that you can't really get there fighting with Battleline. You can't get there fighting against her and having her be this obstacle. So keeping in mind she's a personification of anxiety and doubt and fear, you can't get there battling her, you have to just accept her. Battleline came to realize this about halfway through the game, and Battleline wasn't ready to accept this right away, but she did feel a sort of resentment and loneliness and anger towards Madeline. But the more they butted heads, the more they spoke, the more they spent time together in these situations, she came around to the idea as well that they need each other to reach the top. And so they did. And I thought that was a very special way of explaining that you're not always going to be able to do things with courage and without fear and without anxiety. Sometimes you'll be afraid and you have to try things anyway. Sometimes you'll be anxious and you still have to face your fear anyway, and you'll be stronger because of it. You'll be better because of that. But just because you're afraid or anxious, it doesn't mean that you're broken or that you can't do it. You can still act in spite of your fear or your anxiousness. And I thought that was a great lesson that this game showed. Also, I really want to call out this one scene. Well, it happens twice, but the first time in particular, when Theo and Madeline are trapped in a tram, one of those carts that travel by rope that transports them from mountaintop to mountaintop. She starts freaking out because their tram gets stuck in place by Battleline, and they're basically helpless. They can't get out. They're both stressed out, except for Theo. He keeps a cool head, and he teaches Madeline this technique to stay calm when you're anxious or nervous or afraid. And he tells her to imagine that there's a feather floating right in front of you, and you have to keep it floating gently in the air. So you do that with your breath. And imagine how you would have to breathe to keep the feather floating in the air without it falling down or flying away. It would be very gently that you inhale as it starts to glide down, and then you exhale very smoothly so that it stays floating in front of you. And the sequence that plays out is so wonderful and relaxing, and I think is an actual useful tool that you can use in real life to calm yourself down if you're ever in a place where you feel too nervous to go through with something, or if you feel like you're in a point in your life where you think you can't handle whatever situation you're in. Maybe just take a minute to sit back and remember to breathe very smoothly, in and out. Just relax. I think it does a lot for your mind, does a lot for your emotions. I think it was a very powerful moment, and I didn't expect it to have such a deep meaning with the small amounts of story beats that it had, because a lot of it was just great platforming gameplay, which I want to talk about a little bit. It was actually really great levels. I loved the aha moments that I got when I figured out what I had to do. There aren't puzzles necessarily, there's just ways that you figure out. As I'll speak for myself personally, I died a lot in this game. I think easily over 1,000 times. It keeps a record of all your deaths. Easily over 1,000 times until I beat this game. But I think that's also part of the experience, the failure and trying again. And you get to see, every time you get a little bit further, what's the right way of going about the level. And I love that moment when it clicked, that's how I get this level done. Now it's just a matter of my technique and my skill. And you're building that along the way with each failure, getting better every time you start again. I don't think it was a very hard game. I think there was hard segments. There's a lot of very generous save points with each level. The levels are confined to one screen segment, so if you go from one end of the screen to the next and you make it, it usually saves you there. If you die, you would start again from that starting point. But there are harder segments where you would run through an extended period of the level where it could last a while, maybe 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes. It feels like, at least, until you reach the end of that segment. And if you die, you would have to start from the very beginning. That's where the game felt like it was getting more difficult, but besides that, it was just generally very fun to play through. And I loved figuring out the puzzle, and I loved how clever the puzzles were. I'm calling them puzzles, but they really weren't. It was just ways to traverse the level. So I'll just say I love the way that they designed the levels to show what you have to do to get to certain areas, or to collect the strawberries, which you'll see strawberries in the game. You don't need them, but they're there if you just want to have an extra thing to collect, or if you want achievements or trophies or whatever it is. But yeah, the gameplay was really great, and going back and connecting it to the story, near the end of the game, after you and your reflection of doubts and anxiety, you guys decide to work together and realize that you'll get further together instead of fighting each other and going nowhere. You literally start to work together, and there will be segments of the game where you'll double jump and Battle Line will give you a triple jump, or she'll hold on to you and fly you over to another segment of the level. And I thought it worked very well. This game is just smart in so many ways, in the design, in the story, in the message, and in the way that it teaches you things in a subtle way. And that's what I really loved about it.